श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी इति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे। शून्यवादिनी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा, प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा। जय देवा जय गुरुदेवा, गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा। जय। ओम अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददान्ति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरु श्रीयुतः पदकमलं श्रीगुरुवैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्ण चैतन्य देवं श्री राधा कृष्ण पादा सहगण ललित श्री विशाखान्वितं। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीना बंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमस्ते। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे. So, okay, welcome dear devotees for our regular Srimad Bhagavad Gita session. Today we are discussing from the 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, which is entitled Nature, the Enjoyer and Consciousness. This is the heading of the 13th chapter, and today we will be discussing shlokas from 6 to 12. Sure. So, Mataji, we are starting. Lakshmi Mataji.
Yes, Mataji, sure.
Okay. So, in the 12th chapter, essentially was Krishna speaks about the progressive bhakti, which is the best form of bhakti, and if we are not on that stage, from wherever we are, how can we progress in our devotional service and thereby achieve the perfection? That way, everybody is included in the process of bhakti yoga. So that is the essence of the 12th chapter. And then towards the end, we have the different qualities when a devotee has, which endears Krishna, which brings the devotee closer to Krishna. That way, the 12th chapter ends. In the 13th chapter, we know the Bhagavad Gita, we have 3 sections, 1 to 6, 7 to 12, and 13 to 18. And the first 6 chapters mainly focus on Karma Yoga, And last the middle 6 chapters focus more on Bhakti Yoga, and last 6 chapters focus on Jnana Yoga. And as we know, yoga means linking towards the Supreme. And so when it comes to Jnana Yoga also, ultimately, it aims towards Bhakti Yoga. So we are beginning from the, we have just begun the last section of the Bhagavad Gita, that is the Jnana Yoga section, of which 5 shlokas are done. In the beginning of the 13th chapter, Arjuna puts across 6 questions, asks about 6 topics to Lord Krishna, that is Kshetra, that is what is Kshetra? First is Prakriti, the material nature, Purusha, the Supreme Lord, the enjoyer of Prakriti. Then we have Kshetra. Kshetra is the field of activity, that is the body. Kshetragna, the knower of the field of activity.
ठंड में आलू पालक खाने का मजा ही कुछ और है.
Mataji, please be on mute.
Sorry, Mataji, I am muted. Yeah.
So the fourth one is Kshetragna. Kshetragna is knowledge of the soul as well as super soul. And then we have a Gyan, what is real knowledge, and Neyam, the knower of the knowledge. So these are 6 questions put across by Arjuna to Krishna. And Krishna tells that he first explains about the field of activities, that's the material body. Then when he comes to knower of the material body, he says there is something called a soul as well as a super soul. And soul is Anu and super soul is Vibhu. And that way he distinguishes and explains detail about Kshetra and Kshetragna. Now in the 5th shloka, today we are dealing from the 6th one. In the 5th shloka, Krishna tells Arjuna that he is going to explain. Now, in the 4th shloka, he says that I'm going to explain about the qualities of the body, the material body, qualities of the body, the composition, the contents, then the composition, the transformations. So there are 6 topics which Krishna tells in the 4th shloka that he will going to explain about the Kshetra and Kshetragna also. And in the 5th shloka, he emphasizes on the point that the knowledge about Kshetra and Kshetragna has been there since time immemorial. That is, he mentions of the different Vedic texts that emphasize on the knowledge of Kshetra and Kshetragna. And so that way, that is, there another point to be noted is how even Krishna, he quotes authorities. So it is very important for us also to quote authorities to emphasize our point. And then now in the 6th shloka, idea is Krishna is telling the knowledge, the complete knowledge of Kshetra and Kshetragna comprises of Jnana. That is the real knowledge. Real knowledge is to know the workings and the different compositions and the transformations that go on through to the material body, Kshetra, and also about the soul and the super soul. This, when a person knows completely, he is in knowledge. That is real knowledge. That is Jnana. So that he tells in the 6th shloka. So we will read about in the 6th shloka. So now exactly. Now in the 6th shloka, it is 6th and 7th together. And in the 6th, okay, we will read the shloka first, then we will discuss about that. Anybody wants to read the shloka? I'll just one second, I'll share my screen. So 6 and 7, Shilpa Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. Thank you. Mahabhutanyahangkaro buddhiravyaktameva cha indriyani dashaikam cha panchachendriya gocharaha ichchadveshah sukham dukham sangataschetana dhrutihi eta kshetram samasena savikaram mudatama. Hare Krishna Mataji, should I read the
Yes,
translation?
Yes, I'll just scroll down.
No, I have the book, Mataji.
But others also.
The 5 great elements, false ego, intelligence, the unmanifested, the 10 senses, and the mind, the 5 sense objects, desire, hatred, happiness, distress, the aggregate, the life symptoms, and convictions. All these are considered in summary to be the field of activities and its interactions. Purport, Mataji?
No, 1 second. We will
Hare
just
Krishna.
do a little discussion. See, now in the 4th shloka, Krishna promises Arjuna that he will tell about the Kshetra and Kshetragna. What I'll tell? Composition of the body, then the qualities of the body, the transformations of the body, the origin of the body, the power of the knower of the body, and the identity of the knower of the body. So power of the knower of the body and identity of the knower of the body forms the Kshetragna part, and Kshetra part forms the composition, qualities, transformation, origin of the body. So these topics in the 4th shloka, Krishna tells to Arjuna that he will explain. And in the 5th shloka, as we spoke just now, that he quotes the authorities and different Vedic texts that are emphasizing on the understanding of this knowledge about Kshetra and Kshetragna, that is body, soul, and the super soul. Now in the 6th shloka, that is 6th and 7th, 2 shlokas we read just now. In the 6th shloka, it is about the composition of the body, and the 7th shloka is about the transformations of the body. So those two questions, those 2 topics which Krishna had told Arjuna that he will explain, he explains in the 6th and 7th shloka. So we just read the translation. Prashanti Mataji, you can read the purport.
Yes, Mataji, Hare Krishna, Danu Pranam. Purport by Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada ki Jai. From all the authoritative statements of the great sages, the Vedic hymns and the aphorisms of the Vedanta Sutra, the components of this world can be understood as follows. First, there are earth, water, fire, air, and ether. These are the 5 great elements, Mahabhuta. Then there are false ego, intelligence, and the unmanifested stage of the 3 modes of nature. Then there are 5 senses for acquiring knowledge: the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. The 5 working senses: voice, legs, hands, anus, and genitals. Then above the senses, there is mind, which is within and which can be called the sense within. Therefore, including the mind, there are 11 senses altogether. Then there are 5 objects of the senses: smell, taste, form, touch, and sound. Now, the aggregate of these 24 elements is called the field of activity. If one makes any analytical study of these 24 subjects, then he can very well understand the field of activity. Then there are desire, hatred, happiness, and distress, which are interactions, representations of the 5 great elements in the gross body. The living symptoms, represented by consciousness and convictions, are the manifestation of the subtle body, mind, ego, and intelligence. These subtle elements are included within the field of activities.
Okay, so
yes.
1 second. So see now, see, this is more technical part. Even if we learn it by heart, or if we don't so much understand, so much doesn't make a difference to us, because it is really high topic. Here it is mentioned 24 elements. There are 5 working senses, 5 gross elements. Then we have the mind, false ego, and the intelligence. Then the subtle elements. Then we have pradhana. Then we have the working senses. Then the tanmatras. There are 24 elements. So the entire body's composition is in totality is just these 24 elements. So everything comes within these 24 elements, and more detail about that is there in the 3rd kind of the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the Sankhya philosophy. The Sankhya philosophy, analytical study of the body. In chapters, it has been explained about the 24 elements, their interactions like that. So this is the composition of the material body. Now, when the 6th shloka is there, this is 6th shloka. The 7th shloka, what it says is, Ichha Dvesha. What was that? Ichha Desha Sukham Dukkham Sangas Chetana Dhrati Etat Kshetram Samasena Sa Vikaram Udharatam. That is, these are then we have the different interactions. That is, we have happiness, desire, hatred, happiness, distress, interactions. So the transformation of the subtle body, that brings transformation in the gross body. Like suppose if somebody is very angry, then eyes becomes red, or if he is very sad, then water flow from the eyes. Otherwise, if he is completely bewildered and confused, his mind does not work, and it is very much oblivious. He is very much oblivious to the external situation, and it is very obvious to the outside person that he is not okay. So the transformations, the situations, the thoughts and the processes that go on in the subtle body, in our mind, through our desires, hatred, happiness, distress, they are directly connected to the gross body. So these are the different transformations that bring about in your body, which is externally visible. So it is called as a, this is the answer for the transformation, that icha, dvesha, all this bring about a change in the body. So the 5 great elements are a gross representation of the false ego, which in turn represents the primal stage of false ego, technically called as materialistic conception or tamasa buddhi, intelligence and ignorance. This further represents the unmanifested stage of 3 modes of material nature. The unmanifested mode of material nature called pradhana. See, the pradhana basically is, we know that there are 3 modes of material nature: mode of goodness, passion and ignorance. And everybody, every living entity has a combination of this. The proportion in which it is there, it varies, and all our interactions with the material world, with the different living entities, is due to the modes of material nature that we have. The different combinations of this material, there are only 3, but they just mix and match in so many unlimited ways, and so everybody has a different behavior. So the unmanifested modes of material nature is called as pradhana. That is, it is a stage where it is not yet active. So much, even I don't know. I've just understood in the words. So much I cannot understand what exactly is happening. But what I understood from the words is, it is an unmanifested, means the entire, when the annihilation happens, all the living entities are in the Shushupti stage, that they are all there, but they are not active. And only when during the day of Brahma, and I think during the after the big annihilation, when Mahavishnu opens his eyes and sees through the material nature, that time the Prakriti gets impregnated, and all the working starts. It's something like, uh, means if you have seen any videos, like if they see then how inside a womb of a mother, the very first place of fertilization of the egg, how it happens. If we see some videos, we see something happening, and that is it, the egg is in a very Shushupta stage, and then when it interacts, when it gets fertilized, and all the interactions happen, and then we see the formation of a subtle formation of a body, and then that body becomes a human baby, and the human baby gets all the different parts. So that is a kind of, you know, if you see a video of it, what we can see something happening. First it was quiet, then it got it has come in touch with the sperm, so it gets interactions happens, and then some transformations happen, and then we can see something manifestation happening. So something like that happens when the modes of material nature are there. They are in Shushupta stage, and that unmanifested stage is called as pradhana. So that is also a part of the material nature. And one who desires to know the 24 elements in detail along with the interactions should study the philosophy in more detail. That is in the Srimad Bhagavatam 3rd canto. In Bhagavad Gita, summary only is given. The body is a representation of all these factors, and there are changes of the body which are 6 in number. That these are the transformations. See, here Prabhupada mentions transformations like body is born, grown, it stays, produces byproducts, then it begins to decay, and it gets destroyed. Therefore, the field is non-permanent material thing. However, the Kshetraga node of field is proper. It is different. So here, Prabhupada, when he's telling about the transformations, his transformation is telling from birth to death. That transformation is saying. And also in the shloka, if we see, these are the different, because of our different thoughts or different desires, of a different subtle understandings, that icha, dvesha, happiness, distress. Because of this, there is a change in the subtle body, which brings about change in the gross body. So finally, in this 6th and 7th, we understand about the composition of the material body, as well as the transformations that the material body takes place. And so Prabhupada says the more underlining factor is because these transformations are not permanent, and even the composition also, finally everybody comes back like earth, water, fire, air, and ether. We have, these are the 5 gross elements. So but we have apparently one kind of form we have. Tomorrow if we die, then we go back to that raw form. So nothing is permanent, so it is always changing. So we don't have to focus so much on the changing factor. Although we need to maintain it, we don't have to be completely caught up with the changing factor. That is the kshetra. So focus more on the kshetragna. And what is kshetragna? Is the soul and the super soul. That is the proprietor of this material bodies. That's the soul. The proprietor of all material bodies. That is the super soul. So that is which is eternal. That is which is permanent. That is which we has to be known. And so Krishna says that, however, Prabhupada says, however, the Kshetragna, the knower of the field, is proprietor, is different. So he is different from Kshetra. We don't have to identify ourselves with we feel that the body is all in all. So identifying the body as the spirit is wrong. So spirit, soul, and the body is totally different. The spirit soul is engaged in the body. And another important thing is, when Krishna is talking about this jnana, the main emphasis of telling about jnanam is so that there is a detachment that is formed. That is now kshetragna, the soul, is also kshetragna, super soul is also kshetragna. Kshetragna is entrapped in kshetra. And because we are conditioned souls, so we are called as conditioned souls. The soul, although it is Sachidananda, it has qualitatively same as the super soul. Unfortunately, because of its heavy conditioning, by associating the soul with the body, it has a different set of thoughts, desires, and it is getting into a different situation altogether. But the Jnanam is knowing about the body, the soul, and the super soul. This, by understanding this, the Kshetragna can be separated from the Kshetra. In the sense, Kshetragna can get liberated from the Kshetra. The Kshetragna can understand its original identity. That is, the conditioning of the soul can be removed. So we go through this process of understanding this. What is Kshetra? What is Kshetragna? We are understanding so that our soul, the conditionings that is there in our soul, can be removed. That is, we can free ourselves from conditioning. So that is the reason we are knowing this, we are understanding this knowledge. A little technical, but worth understanding. Okay, now today we are in this last shloka now, because 8 to 12 are together. We will take some time on this, and okay, we'll do one thing now. Sudha Mataji, one person, two shlokas we can read, because there are many shlokas, no? Sudha
Yes,
Mataji,
Mata.
yes, 2 shloka, yeah.
Yes, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Amanitvam madambitvam ahimsa shantirarjavam acharyopasanam shaucham stairyamatma vinigraha indriyarteshu vairagyam anahankara evacha janma mrityu jara vyadhi dukkha doshanudarshanam. Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Divya Mataji, next 2.
Okay, Mataji, can you scroll a little?
Yeah.
Asaktir anabhishwanga putradhara grihadishu nityam cha samachittatvam ishtanishto papattishu mayi chananga mayi chananya yogena bhaktir avyabhicharini vivikta desha sevitvam aratir jana samsadi. Hare Krishna Mataji, Tanvat pranams.
Dandavats. Krishnamurti Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Yeah.
Adhyatma jnana nityatvam tattva jnanartha darshanam etad jnanam iti proktam ajnanam yadadonyatha.
Yeah, you can read the translation also.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Translation by A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Prabhupada ki jai. Humility, pridelessness, non-violence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, self-control, renunciation of the objects of sense gratification, absence of false ego, the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age and disease, detachment, freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home and the rest. Even mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events, constant and unallied devotion to me, aspiring to live in a solitary place, detachment from the general mass of people, accepting the importance of self-realization, and philosophical search for the absolute truth. All these I declare to be knowledge. And besides this, whatever there may be is ignorance. Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna. So, there are 20 qualities which Krishna tells in this, in 4 shlokas, and of which the 16th one is, what is 16th is, this one. Mai chananya yogena bhaktir avyabhicharini. Constantly devoted to the Supreme Lord Krishna is the topmost. That is, all other 19 qualities are to be developed so that we get Ananya Bhakti to the Supreme Lord. So Ananya Bhakti to the Supreme Lord is the goal. All others revolve around it. So if we have Ananya Bhakti towards the Supreme Lord, then all other 19 qualities not naturally and automatically manifest. And 19 qualities are manifested, are developed consciously so that we get Ananya Bhakti to the Supreme Lord. So of this, that forms the 16th one. What we will do is, quickly from each shloka, we will find out which are the numbers, and then we will read through the purport, because Prabhupada has explained in detail in his purport. So see, now first shloka, if we see, there are 9 qualities that are told here. Amanitvam. So if we see, now these shlokas, when we, these qualities when we see, we cannot say they are totally disconnected from each other, because amanitvam means humility, adambitvam means pridelessness. So humility and pridelessness, they still go hand in hand. What is humility? You're not expecting from name, fame, and pridelessness is also something similar. So we cannot so much distinguish, but the specifically that is highlighted here. So amanitvam means humility. There are 9 which are told in the first shloka, that is 8th one. Amanitvam is humility, adambitvam is pridelessness, ahimsa is non-violence. Specifically, one is non-violence, is killing of animals. Another deeper level, of more subtle level of non-violence, is not to give unnecessary distress to any living entity. Simply creating problems and causing distress in another's life is also himsa. So ahimsa means not creating problems or not creating distress in others' life. So that is also ahimsa. Shantir, arjavam. What is shantir? Shantir is tolerance. Shantir is tolerance. Arjavam is simplicity. Correct na? Arjavam is simplicity. Acharyo pashanam saucham means serving a bona fide spiritual master, serving and accepting his thoughts, teachings, and executing. That is acharyo pashanam saucham. Sthairyam. Sthairyam is steadfastness. Acharyo pashanam saucham. Saucham is cleanliness there. Acharyo pashanam is following a bona fide spiritual master. Shaucham is cleanliness. Thairyam is steadfastness. Atma vinigraha means self-controlled, not to get too much deviated by sense gratification. So that is self-control. Next is indriyartheshu vairagyam, getting detached from sense objects. Anahankara evacha. Anahankara means no false ego. No false ego. Janma mrityu jara vyadi dukkha doshanu darshanam. Understanding the basic problem of this material life is birth, old age, death, and disease. These are the basic problems. We need to get out of these problems. The whole, all the sufferings of this material nature is because of Janma Mrityu Jada Vyadi. Because we are stuck up in this cycle of birth, old age, death, and disease, we are encountering different problems. Understanding this is knowledge. Next one is asaktir anabhiswangaha. Asaktir means being detached. Asaktir means being attached. Asaktir means being detached. Then anabhiswanga, that is freedom from, okay. Anabhiswanga putradara grahadishu, being detached from, that is not being too much attached to one's family or family members, but being responsible. That is, you be responsible, you be loving, you be caring, but you don't get too much attached to them. So that we should not get attached. If you get attached, then that is cause of janma mrityu jada vyadhi only. So that is also understand, that is also knowledge. Nityam sa samachittatvam, being equipoised, being equipoised. Next one, you will see. Being equipoised. See now maya, so that is nityam cha samachittatvam ishtanuto papatishtu. That is for pleasant and unpleasant situations, being equipoised. Mai chananya yogena bhakti avyabhicharini. This is the highlight of the entire set of shlokas. Highlight is without deviation should be devoted to the Supreme Lord. Constant devotion to the Supreme Lord is Mai Chananya Yogena Bhaktir Avyabhicharini. The next one is Vivikta Desha Sevitvam, that is being secluded, that is being away from non-devotees, being away from non-devotees. And no, Vivikta Desha Sevitvam means being in seclusion, that is staying in some holy places like that. But Prabhupada says that being Vivikta Desha Sevitvam means being closer with the like-minded people, like that Prabhupada emphasizes. Then Aratri Jana Samsiddhi means detached from people who are with the different aspirations. Being detached from people who are not having the same aspirations as devotional aspirations. Next is Adhyatma Gnana Nityatvam. That is self-realization, importance of accepting self-realization, importance of knowing self-realization. Adhyatma Gnana Nityatvam, Tattva Gnanartha Darshanam. That is philosophical search for the absolute truth. So totally there are 29, plus then we had 3 plus 3, plus 9 plus 3 plus 3 is 15, then another 3 we had, then another 2 we had. So 20. So all this comprises of knowledge. Anything other than this is ignorance. That Krishna says. Now what we will do is we will read through the purport paragraph by paragraph, and we will see with how examples Prabhupada is explaining these different qualities. So Prashanti Mataji, you can start reading the purport.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Purport by Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada ki jai. This process of knowledge is sometimes misunderstood by less intelligent men as being the interaction of the field of activity. But actually, this is the real process of knowledge. If one accepts this process, then the possibility of approaching the absolute truth exists. This is not the interaction of the 24 elements as described before. This is actually the means to get out of the entanglement of those elements.
One second. So we understood the composition of the material body. So this is not what Prabhupada is trying to say. This is not the interactions, how those 24 elements come together to form the body. This is not that. This is the development of qualities so that the soul gets detached from the body. That is the reason. This is the understanding for cultivating ourselves so that we attain finally liberation from the conditioning of the material body. That is what Prabhupada is telling. Yes, ma'am.
The embodied soul is entrapped by the body, which is a casing made of the 24 elements, and the process of knowledge, as described here, is the means to get out of it. Of all the descriptions of the process of knowledge, the most important point is described in the first line of the 11th verse. Mai Chanyanya Yogena Bhaktir Avyabhicharini. The process of knowledge terminates in unalloyed devotional service to the Lord. So if one does not approach or is not able to approach the transcendental service of the Lord, then the other 19 items are of no particular value. But if one takes to devotional service in full Krishna consciousness, the other 19 items automatically develop within him. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, Yashasvi यश्चास्ति भक्तिर् भगवती अकिंचन सर्वैर्गुणैस्तत्र संसाते
Samasate
surah. Samasate surah. All the good qualities of knowledge develop in one who has attained the stage of devotional service. The principle of accepting a spiritual master, as mentioned in the eighth verse, is essential. Even for one who takes to devotional service, it is most important. Transcendental life begins when one accepts a bona fide spiritual master. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, clearly states here that this process of knowledge is the actual path. Anything speculated beyond this is nonsense. As for
So,
the knowledge,
Mataji, one second. So, what you know here, one thing what he very clearly said is this is not the interactions of the different compositions of the body. This is specifically understanding so that one gets freed from the condition. That is one thing. Second thing is he is emphasizing that the 16th quality, that is Mai Chanyanya Yogana Bhaktir Avyavicharana. The process of knowledge terminates in unalloyed devotional service. The whole purpose of knowing why this knowledge is required. Why do we need to know about the body? Why do we need to know about the soul, super soul, everything? So that we understand that Supreme Personality of Godhead is Shri Krishna only, and developing unalloyed devotional service, one-minded devotional service to the Supreme Lord is the purpose of existence. To understand that, all other information is given. So Prabhupada also says that if we have that quality, then all of the 19 qualities naturally and automatically develop. Otherwise, the whole purpose of doing all the other things is to develop unalloyed devotional service to the Supreme Lord. So that is second point he's telling, and he's also here telling that how, see, that is Acharya Upasanam is there, that will come. But here only Prabhupada is mentioning already that how the main thing is accepting a bona fide spiritual master who is in the right, coming from the right disciplic succession, and तद्विधि प्रणिपातेन परिप्रश्नेन सेवाय उपदेक्षन्ति ज्ञानं ज्ञानेन सत्वदर्शिना. That is hearing from him, serving him, and accepting his instructions, and serving with humility. That forms the basic principle. That is, if we want to grow in our spiritual life, we need to accept a bona fide spiritual and invite spiritual master, imbibe by his instructions. So that is the highlight that Prabhupada is telling in this particular paragraph. Next paragraph, Mataji, Sudha Mataji, you can read.
thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji. As for the knowledge outlined here, the items may be analyzed as follows. Humility means that one should not be anxious to have the satisfaction of being honored by others. The material conception of life makes us very eager to receive honor from others, but from the point of view of a man in perfect knowledge who knows that he is not this body, anything, honor or dishonor, pertaining to this body is useless. One should not be hankering after this material deception. People are very anxious to be famous for their religion, and consequently, sometimes it is found that without understanding the principles of religion, one enters into some group which is not actually following religious principles and then wants to advertise himself as a religious mentor. As for actual advancement in spiritual science, one should have a test to see how far he is progressing. He can judge by these items.
Yeah. So
Non
what here Prabhupada is telling is basically humility. That is giving up name, fame, giving up, not expecting pranadapi sunechena tarovare sahishnuna manena manadena kirtana. So this is the Siksashtakam verse, that is not expecting any name, fame from others, always respecting others, not expecting any respect from others, being tolerant like a tree, humble like a grass. So this is actual humility. That is from the core of our heart, we should be like that. It is not that artificially if we imbibe such qualities, then it is just after some time we feel very frustrated and disgusted, and then we no more can put up the show of humility after that. So and here Prabhupada is also mentioning that sometimes we put us, we feel that okay, we are part of this group, and then we want to preach others, and then we want respect. And the whole point is we should know where we are heading to. Are we actually progressing? That is what Prabhupada is saying, that we need to scale properly and have with a great proper understanding that where are we heading, and that way we can understand that are we progressing or not. Simply just being a part of a group, or trying to talk to someone, because we are giving a class, and if we think that we are on that level, then we are simply deceiving ourselves. So that is what Prabhupada is telling here. Next, Simran Mataji can read.
Yes, Mataji. Non-violence is generally taken to mean not killing or destroying the body, but actually non-violence means not to put others into distress. People in general are trapped by ignorance in the material concept of life, and they perpetually suffer material pains. So unless one elevates people to spiritual knowledge, one is practicing violence. One should try his best to distribute real knowledge to the people so that they may become enlightened and leave this material entanglement. This is non-violence. Tolerance means that one should be practiced to bear insult and dishonor from others. If one is engaged in the advancement of spiritual knowledge, there will be so many insults and much dishonor from others. This is expected because material nature is so constituted. Even a boy like Prahlada, who only 5 years old, was engaged in the civilization of spiritual knowledge.
Cultivation.
Was
engaged in the cultivation.
Oh, okay, Mataji. Cultivation. Oh, only 5 years old, was entangled in the cultivation of spiritual knowledge, who endangered when his father became antagonist to his devotion. The father tried to kill him in so many ways, but Prahlada tolerated him. So there may be many impediments to making advancement in spiritual knowledge, but we should be tolerant and continue our progress with determination.
Now, 1 second. Yes, Mataji. So, first thing is non-violence. We had discussed that one is killing of animals. That is in a gross level. Second level is not to cause distress in others' lives. This is also non-violence. But Prabhupada goes on to the next level that if we do not take that extra step of distributing or sharing spiritual knowledge or making others giving others spiritual knowledge, that means we are practicing violence. Consciously, we should make an effort to share or spread the spiritual knowledge or spirituality from our side. Then only we are practicing non-violence. Otherwise, simply just being by ourselves is also violence. That is what Prabhupada is saying. So one should try to distribute the real knowledge to people so that they can be enlightened. That much extra effort we should take. Then only we are practicing non-violence. Second, last, then here tolerance, that is accepting honor, dishonor from others. That Prabhupada says is material nature thing only is like that. And we will be dishonored. We like it, we don't like it, with good things, with bad things. So that should not be a point of consideration for our growth at all. We should never get bothered, or we should never bother that, oh, I'm getting, nobody is respecting me. That is how the material world is designed only, so that we get humbled and we progress towards spiritual life. Even like 5 years old Prahlad was also endangered by his father. So then where is the question of we are not neither small or nor we are like Prahlad. So we cannot compare only. So we will go through all these situations. We need to be tolerant. And his own father was trying to kill him. We think that, oh, she is my friend, he is my friend, or my neighbor, or grandfather, someone. Own father was putting his life into danger. Danger means to the level of killing. So right now we are not in that situation where people are wanting to kill us at least. So then we are much, much better. And if Prahlada can tolerate, then we are not no one, because we are not as ideal as Prahlad anyways. So impediments will come in life. We need to learn to tolerate. That is what Prabhupada is saying here. Yes, Padma Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Pranam. Simplicity means that without diplomacy, one should be so straightforward that he can disclose the real truth even to an enemy. As for acceptance of the spiritual master, that is essential, because without the instruction of a bona fide spiritual master, one cannot progress in the spiritual science. One should approach the spiritual master with all humility and offer him all services, so that he will be pleased to bestow his blessings upon the disciple. Because a bona fide spiritual master is a representative of Krishna. If he bestows any blessings upon his disciple, that will make the disciple immediately advance without the disciples following the regulative principles. Or the regulative principles will be easier for one who has served the spiritual master without reservation. Shall I continue, Mataji?
Yes, one more paragraph.
Cleanliness. Cleanliness is essential for making advancement in spiritual life. There are two kinds of cleanlinesses. external and internal. External cleanliness means taking a bath, but for internal cleanliness, one has to think of Krishna always and chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Sorry, Mataji. The process, this process cleans accumulated dust of past karma from the mind.
Yeah. Okay. So here three things Prabhupada expressed. One is simplicity, one is cleanliness, one is abiding by the spiritual master. So he says simplicity means no duplicity. No duplicity means being straightforward. Being straightforward means still being sensitive. Being straightforward means as I actually, you know what, I wanted to beat you up, but today I'm not beating you up. That is not being very straightforward. It's not like that. Being sensitive and means without hypocrisy. That is aage piche, duplicious, not duplicious nature. So being simplicity, and also it is told that diplomacy means diplomacy for a higher cause. We cannot decide that okay, I'm going to be a diplomat, but it is for higher cause, and by doing this Krishna will be pleased. We cannot decide like that, but we do understand that in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, we had Rupa and Sanatana Goswami who had to come out of the Muslim rule, means they were serving by force, they were being had to serve the Muslim ruler, and when they met Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they had to come out of the Nawab Hussain Shah's service, and at that time they diplomatically tricked the Muslim jailer, and they through that trick they could come out. So that way diplomacy is sometimes utilized in Krishna's service, but otherwise for our understanding we should not be duplicitous. At least we should not be duplicitous, and diplomatic for our benefit for sense gratification is not recommended here. And then Prabhupada explain how about spiritual master explains and pleasing the spiritual master is the most beneficial, helps us to grow faster in our devotional life, because understanding the mood and the mission of the spiritual master and assisting and serving, and by our actions and by our thoughts, words, if we are serving that, we get the blessings of the spiritual master, and that way we can progress in devotional life. And next it says about cleanliness. Cleanliness, internal and external. External is taking bath, applying tilak, and all these details we know, wearing clean clothes and all. But internal cleanliness takes a higher priority, because internal cleanliness others don't see. External cleanliness people see, so we may be more bothered about, and we may really pay attention to keeping ourselves clean. But when it comes to internal cleanliness, then we may have so many. One thing is Prabhupada says here that internal cleanliness means always think of Krishna, chant Krishna's name, and that way purify your heart. Another level of purify your heart, and that way past karma is removed. Another level of cleanliness, internal not maintaining internal cleanliness, is always being caught up with sense gratification, being very lusty in desire, being very crooked, very evil. So these things only I can make out. Others cannot make out. Externally, we can be very clean, wash our hands 100 times. But internally, if we are very evil-minded, or if crooked, or we are very lusty, or very selfish, greedy, then that is not Krishna. Krishna knows. Then Krishna will not help us. So internal and external cleanliness is important. That is what Prabhupada is saying. And the solution what Prabhupada said here is always constantly chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. That way the heart will get purified, and naturally and automatically the heart will be cleaned. That is what Prabhupada said here. And next one, Subbarao Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Yes.
Shall I read Mata from where?
Double. Steadiness.
Translation and purport.
We are able to hear double. I think 2 places you have logged in.
No, 1 place only, Mataji.
1 place only. Okay.
Now?
Echo is come. Yeah, now it's better. Steadiness, from steadiness. Yes.
It was in charging, probably that. Purport is Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Steadiness means that one should be very determined to make progress in spiritual life. Without such determination, one cannot make tangible progress. And self-control means one should not accept anything which is detrimental to the path of spiritual progress. One should become accustomed to this and reject anything which is against the path of spiritual progress. This is real renunciation. The senses are so strong that they are always anxious to have sense gratification. One should not cater to these demands which are not necessary. The senses should only be gratified to keep the body fit so that one can discharge his duty in advancing in spiritual life. The most important and uncontrollable sense is the tongue. If one can control the tongue, then there is every possibility of controlling the other senses. The function of the tongue is to taste and to vibrate. Therefore, by systemic regulation, the tongue should always be engaged in tasting the remnants of footsteps offered to Krishna and chanting Hare Krishna. As far as the eyes are concerned, they should not be allowed to see anything but the beautiful form of Krishna. That will control the eyes. Similarly, the ear should be engaged in hearing about Krishna and the nose in smelling the flowers offered to Krishna. This is the process of devotional service, and is understood here that Bhagavad Gita is simply expounding this science of devotional service. Devotional service is the main and sole objective. Unintelligent commentators on the Bhagavad Gita try to divert the mind of the reader to other subjects, but there is no other subject in Bhagavad Gita than devotional service.
Yeah. Okay. So here Prabhupada especially tells two things. One is steadfastness, steadiness. Another one is self-control. So steadiness is like Rupa Goswami says, Nishchaya Dhairat. That is moving forward with determination and intelligence. So moving forward with determination, that is being determined to perform devotional service. That is, if I say that I will chant in the morning 16 rounds, means trying to make the adjustments in such a way that we will be able to chant 16 rounds in the morning, or whatever, a small or big way. That is, determination is important. First one, to understand that this is important for my growth in spiritual life, and these things I should do, and I will do this way. And then once we put down the jot down the way we want to do it, then getting stuck to that process and trying to be determined. Even if the senses move away, we said, no, we need to be in this path. This is the way I want to execute it, so that we achieve some kind of progress in spiritual life. So that is steadiness in spiritual life. And then little elaborately, Prabhupada explains about self-control, how the senses get attracted to sense gratification. And in the senses, is telling how the tongue is there, nose is there, ears are there, eyes are there, how they should be engaged in different ways in serving Krishna. And by engaging the senses in service of Krishna, we can achieve perfection. Otherwise, the senses, if they go haywire and we try to listen to the senses, then the senses will pull towards sense gratification. That way, it is detrimental to our spiritual progress. Okay, next one, who wants to read? Padma Mataji.
Yes, Mataji. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. False ego means accepting this body as oneness. When one understands that he is not this body and the spirit and his spirit soul, he comes to his real ego. Ego is there. False ego is condemned, but not real ego. In the Brahmasmi,
in the Vedic literature.
In the Vedic literature, Prahad Aranyaka Upanishad 1.4.10, it is said, Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman, I am spirit, this I am. The sense of self also exists in the liberated stage of self-realization. This sense of I am is ego. But when the sense of I am is applied to this false body, it is false ego. When the sense of self is applied to reality, that is real ego. There are some philosophers who say we should give up our ego, but we cannot give up our ego, because ego means identity. we ought, of course, to give up the false identification of the body.
Okay.
One
So
should
here,
try-
no, Mataji, yeah. So here what, the specifically Prabhupada says there is something called as ego. So only there is something called as false egos. And what is real ego? What is the real identity? Identity, Jivera Swarupa Krishnera Nityadas. I am the servant of Krishna. This is my real identity. I am not the, I am the spirit soul. I am not this body. I am the spirit soul. This is my identity. I am the servant of Krishna. This is my identity. I am servant of my spiritual master. This is my identity. But if we serve, we think that no, I am this, I am the president of India or whatever, I am whoever, I am a preacher here. So if we identify ourselves that way in the bodily conception, then we are entrapped in the conception of false ego, which is detrimental. That is what Prabhupada is saying. Subbarao Prabhuji, next one.
Mataji. One should try to understand the distress of accepting birth, death, old age, and disease. There are descriptions in various Vedic literatures of birth. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, the world of unborn, the child's stay in the womb of the mother, its suffering, etc., are all very graphically described. It should be thoroughly understood that birth is distressful because we forget how much distress we have suffered within the womb of the mother. We do not make any solution to the repetition of birth and death. Similarly, at the time of death, there are all kinds of sufferings, and they are also mentioned in the authoritative scriptures. These should be discussed. And as far as disease and old age are concerned, everyone gets practical experience. No one wants to be diseased and no one wants to become old, but there is no avoiding this unless we have a pessimistic view of the material life. Considering the distress of birth, death, old age, and disease, there is no impetus for making advancement in spiritual life. As for
yes. So Prabhupada very nicely says, Janma, we have birth, old age, death, and disease. So he says birth and death is something maybe we may say that I have not seen, or birth I have not seen, I don't remember also. Then he says in the Bhagavatam, it clearly describes it. The child goes through so much of suffering. Now death, no, I am suffering, I am understanding. When I am dying, I know the pain, but I am not able to tell you properly what pain I am going through. And then finally I die. And once I die, I cannot tell you. But that soul has experienced. So when I'm alive, by the time I experience, I'll die only. Na? So by the time when I'm living, if I have to know what pain it goes, read the Shastras, Prabhupada is saying. So birth and death, you can read through Shastras, through an intelligent person will read through Shastras and understand. And when it comes to Prabhupada says is disease and old age, there cannot be one person who may say that, no, I have not experienced any kind of pain in my life yet. So that is not possible. Small children are also in so much of mental stress nowadays. So Prabhupada says, so finally understanding that this is not a good place for me. So that way being pessimistic, not like, oh, pessimistic kid, like not like that. Now I have this life, this body, this can do various positive things to serve Krishna through this body, but not thinking that, okay, this body is all in all, and I want to come back to this material life. Being detached, that is the goal of life. That is Prabhupada is saying. Quickly, we'll read Divya Mataji, next one. We have 3 minutes.
Okay, Mataji. As for detachment, purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. As for detachment from children, wife, and home, it is not meant that one should have no feeling for these. They are natural objects of affection. But when they are not favorable to spiritual progress, then one should not be attached to them. The best process for making the home pleasant is Krishna consciousness. If one is in full Krishna consciousness, he can make his home very happy, because this process of Krishna consciousness is very easy. One need only chant Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Accept the remnants of foodstuffs offered to Krishna, have some discussion on books like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, and engage oneself in deity worship. These 4 things will make one happy. One should train the members of his family in this way. The family members can sit down morning and evening and chant together Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. If one can mold his family life in this way to develop Krishna consciousness, following these 4 principles, then there is no need to change from family life to renounced life. But if
If it is not congenial, not favorable for spiritual advancement, then family life should be abandoned. One must sacrifice everything to realize or serve Krishna, just as Arjuna did. Arjuna did not want to kill his family members, but when he understood that these family members were impediments to his Krishna realization, he accepted the instructions of Krishna and fought and killed them. In all cases, one should be detached from the happiness and distress of family life, because in this world, one can never be fully happy or fully miserable.
Next,
Shall I
read.
continue,
Yes,
Mataji?
yes, yes.
Happiness and distress are concomitant factors of material life. One should learn to tolerate as advised in Bhagavad Gita. One can never restrict the coming and going of happiness and distress. So one should be detached from the materialistic way of life and be automatically equipoised in both cases. Generally, when we get something desirable, we are very happy. And then when we get something undesirable, we are distressed. But if we are actually in the spiritual position, these things will not agitate us. To reach that stage, we have to practice unbreakable devotional service. Devotional service to Krishna without deviation means engaging oneself in the 9 process of devotional service: chanting, hearing, worshipping, offering, respect, etc. Um, as described in the last verse of the 9th chapter, that process should be followed. Naturally, when one is adapted to the spiritual way of life, he will not want to mix with materialistic men. That would go against his grain. One may test himself by seeing how far he is inclined to live in a solitary place without unwanted association. Naturally, a devotee has no taste for unnecessary sporting or cinema going or enjoying some social function, because he understands that these are simply a waste of time. There are many research scholars and philosophers who study sex life or some other subject, but according to Bhagavad Gita, such research work and philosophical speculation has no value. That is more or less nonsensical. According to Bhagavad Gita, one should make research by philosophical discretion into the nature of the soul. One should make research to understand the self. That is recommended here. Shall I continue, Mataji?
Yes, yes, yes. Finish.
As far as self-realization is concerned, it is clearly stated here that Bhakti Yoga is especially practical. As soon as there is a question of devotion, one must consider the relationship between the super soul and the individual soul. The individual soul and the super soul cannot be one, at least not in the Bhakti conception, the devotional conception of life. This service of the individual soul to the supreme soul is eternal, nityam, as it is clearly stated. So bhakti or devotional service is eternal. One should be established in that philosophical conviction. In the Srimad Bhagavatam 1.2.11, this is explained. Vadanti tat tattva vidas tattvam yajnat jnanam advayam. Those who are actually knowers of the absolute truth know that self is realized in 3 different phases as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Bhagavan is the last word in the realization of the absolute truth. Therefore, one should reach up to that platform of understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead and thus engage in the devotional service of the Lord. That is the perfection of knowledge. Beginning from practicing humility up to the point of realization of the supreme truth, the absolute personality of Godhead, this process is just like a staircase beginning from the ground floor and going up to the top floor. Now, on this staircase, there are so many people who have reached the first floor, the second, or the third floor, etc. But unless one reaches the top floor, which is the understanding of Krishna, he is at the lower stage of knowledge. If anyone wants to compete with God and at the same time make advancement in spiritual knowledge, he will be frustrated. It is clearly stated that without humility, understanding is not truly possible. To think oneself God is most puffed up. Although the living entity is always being kicked by the stringent laws of material nature, he still thinks I am God because of ignorance. The beginning of knowledge, therefore, is amanitva, humility. One should be humble and know that he is the subordinate to the Supreme Lord. Due to rebellion against the Supreme Lord, one becomes subordinate to material nature. One must know and be convinced of this truth. Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat
Hare Krishna,
Pranams.
Dandavadan. So Prabhupada has explained really very clearly. Because of shortage of time, means there is nothing much to explain. Everything line by line, very clearly Prabhupada has explained in this purport. So I just took some time to read through the purport also. So thank you very much. Granthra Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Sorry, Lakshmi Mataji, you were little late.
No problem, Mataji. Nothing, not that much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Mataji.
Mataji.
Thank
Dandavat
you,
pranam.
Mataji. Hare
Wonderful
Krishna.
session.
Dandavat
Thank you,
pranam.
Mataji.
Beautiful class.
Dandavat pranam. Hare
Dandavat
Krishna.
pranam.